Today we're going to talk about 2.4, the Southern Colonies. That includes Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. So the Southern Colonies have a much warmer climate compared to both the New England and Middle Colonies. That's because the Southern Colonies, they're farther south, therefore they're closer to the equator, therefore they're warmer, and they're going to have a longer growing season, which makes this region perfect for farming. They're going to have what you call a plantation economy. Charlestown, South Carolina, is a major port city and the economic center of the South. Today we call it Charleston, South Carolina. So this is going to be where all these imports and exports in the South, this is the harbor or the port city that they're going to go through. Many slaves will be sold through this port city known as Charleston or Charlestown, South Carolina. So with a large amount of good soil, the South relied on agriculture, so farming. Large farms called plantations become very common, and on those plantations, they're going to need someone to work those plantations. So the plantations in the Southern Colonies were perfect for cash crops. So a cash crop is a crop produced to make a profit rather than personal consumption. So the two major cash crops that we're going to have early on is tobacco and rice. Now we'll have cotton that'll be well known in the South a little bit later on, but the first two major cash crops that we have in the South are tobacco and rice. So we have the Navigation Act of 1651, and this is going to be passed by the King of England, and it's going to force the 13 colonies to only trade with England. So who does this help? This helps England. So England now gets to set the price. And then who does it hurt? It hurts the South and all the plantation owners because they can no longer sell to the highest bidder. So, for example, if you're a plantation owner in the South, you sell, let's say, tobacco, you're going to sell that tobacco crop at harvest season. You're going to sell it to whoever's willing to spend the most money on it. That might be somebody in the North, as far as like the New England colonies or the Middle colonies. You might sell it to someone like someone up in New France. You might sell it to Indians. You may sell it to someone in Italy, someone in Spain, someone in France. But now, with the Navigation Act of 1651, you can no longer sell it to the highest bidder. Now you have to sell it to England. And so, let's say, for instance, that you normally sell it to someone up in New France. It's too cold up there to grow tobacco. And so you normally sell it to someone up in Canada. And maybe they normally give you, let's say, $50 for your entire tobacco crop every single year. And that's the highest bidder that you could find. So you're happy to sell it for $50 every year. Well, now, under this new law of the Navigation Act, the king basically says you can only sell it to England. So now that's going to take away anyone else as a buyer, which is going to drive the price down. And now the people of England will say, oh, you used to sell it for $50? I will buy it from you for $20. And, so that's going to really drop your price, and it's going to hurt you because you're going to make less money. And then England will then take that tobacco crop that they took, bought for $20, and then they could sell it to the same person in New France for $50, and they're making $30, and they did nothing but basically buy and resell it for a higher price. So this is really going to hurt the South, and it's really going to help England. So England becomes very rich, and this is known as mercantilism, to where the mother country is benefiting from this Navigation Act of 1651. So at the time, England was not considered to be a real wealthy country. They always had a strong military, a strong navy, but this Navigation Act is really what's going to allow England to become very wealthy and really control all the trade in Europe. Because if any European country wants resources from the colonies, they have to buy it directly from England instead of directly from the colonists. Next, we talked about on those plantations in the South that they need workers. So we're going to talk about an indentured servant. So some people wanted to move to the colonies, but could not afford the journey. So if everything's going great in England, there's no reason for you to move to the New World. You have a nice house, you have a good job, maybe you're a farmer and you have good land. Those people, they did not want to come to the New World. The people that want to come to the New World are people that, things are not going great in England. Maybe you don't have a nice house. Maybe you're a farmer with very little land, or maybe you're poor and you want a better job, or you hope to come to the New World and find gold. So those are the people that want to come to the New World. The problem is, a lot of times those people could not afford the boat ticket. So they're going to have what's called an indentured servant, and this is where plantation owners are going to have a contract that these people will sign, agreeing for them to work for a period of time in exchange for the trip to America. So this is a plantation owner in the New World that is going to pay for some European's boat ticket that they cannot afford their own. So they are going to depend on this plantation owner to pay for the boat ticket. They get to the New World, and now they have to work for that boat ticket. They have to pay back this plantation owner to pay him back for the price that he bought this ticket for. And that might be you work for 1 to 2 to 3 years, and then once you're done working, you can then go find your own job or whatever you want to do in the New World. Now, it's important to understand that these indentured servants are not slaves. They're not from Africa. Okay, these people are from Europe, and a lot of times they're lower class people that could not afford a boat ticket for themselves. So after the indentured servant, they try those, and they actually turn out to be pretty expensive. So they end up finding a better source of work, and that is the slaves from Africa. So in the 1700s, slaves were brought from Africa to work on southern plantations, and we'll talk more about the slave trade on the next PowerPoint. So there are two main colonies that we're going to talk about in the Southern Colonies today that are different than the other three. So you have Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. And the main reason for those three colonies being created is to make money, mostly by farming tobacco. Okay, but there's no religious reason behind it. That's the main reason they were created, to make money for England. Now you have Maryland and Georgia. They're a little bit different. Okay, so Maryland is going to be created because of religious reasons. So a lot like William Penn having a place for the Quakers to go in Pennsylvania, they have them a place for the Quakers to escape persecution from the Puritans. Well, you have George Calvert, also known as the Lord Baltimore, is going to do the same thing for the Catholics. So he's going to create Maryland as a religious refuge for the Catholics to go to escape judgment from the Puritans. Okay, if you remember these, over in England, they had the Roman Church of England. They come to the New World, and the Puritans, they change their church, they purify their church to where it becomes a Protestant church. Well, you're going to have these old school people that want a Catholic church, and they don't have anywhere to go. So now Lord Baltimore is going to invite them to Maryland, and he's going to invite all the Catholics there that can, they can study their faith how they want to study it, and they don't have to get judged by the Puritans for it. George Calvert's going to be the first person to dream of a colony in America where Catholics and Protestants or Puritans could prosper together. This is because in Massachusetts, they could not live together. The Catholics were not welcomed in Boston, in the city upon a hill, because their views were different than the Puritans. Now, George Calvert, or Lord Baltimore, he creates what's known as the Toleration Act of 1649. And this made it illegal to prevent any Christian from practicing his or her religion, and imposed fines for those who broke the law. So this leads to the First Amendment. So if you think Toleration Act of 1649, you need to think toleration, meaning they're going to tolerate all religions. So you can basically allow all religions. So it's a freedom of religion, which is the same as the First Amendment. First Amendment, freedom of press, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, but freedom of religion also. So the Toleration Act of 1649 leads to the First Amendment. So even though Maryland was created for religious reasons, it's still known for tobacco farming, okay? Because the soil, the climate, still going to be very similar to that of Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina. So Maryland is going to grow tobacco. they're going to have a lot of Catholics there. They're going to have a lot of people that's just any religion, but they're still going to be, their economy is still going to be based on farming and growing tobacco, a lot like the other Southern colonies. Now, Georgia, on the other hand, Georgia is created not for farming and not for religion. It's a completely different reason. So there was a problem in England. In England, people who could not afford to pay their debts off would be arrested and thrown in jail. The jail became overcrowded with poor people and criminals. So in England, you had to pay taxes to the church because the church is also the government. And if you could not afford to pay these taxes, you would just be arrested and put in prison or jail. Now, if you're in prison or jail, you're not going to be making any more money. So it's going to be the same repeat offenders that are in prison and jail, week after week, month after month, because once they're poor, it's hard to overcome that. And so you're going to have these poor people and criminals that are going to be basically flooding these jails and prison in England, and England needs to clear them out. And so they come up with a solution. So to clean out the Britain's prisons and jails, the king gave James Oglethorpe a land grant for what is called Georgia. So James Oglethorpe takes these criminals, takes these poor people that could not normally afford a boat ticket to the New World, and he's going to give them a boat ticket for free. They're going to come to the New World, and they're going to settle in what is known as Georgia. So Georgia is full of criminals and poor people, and this is really good news for everyone. The reason why, it's a win-win for everyone. The reason why, England, it's a win for England because it's a way to get rid of the poor and criminals. So England's better off now. You're going to get rid of a lot of the poor people, and you're going to get rid of a lot of the criminals. This is going to be great for the king. He doesn't have to worry about those people anymore. It's also going to be great for Georgia because it's going to give these poor people who normally could not afford a boat ticket to the New World, and it's going to give these criminals a second chance. So maybe life was not good in England, but now with them coming to the New World, maybe life will be better. Maybe they can find a new way to, make more money or stay out of trouble. And then it's also going to be a win for the 12 other colonies. So Georgia is the farthest southern state, and it's going to border Florida to the south. And so Florida, at the time, was owned by Spain, and it also had the Seminole Indians that were in Florida. And these Seminole Indians could be very dangerous. And so this is going to allow Georgia to basically be a barrier or a protected wall between the 12 other colonies and Florida. So this is going to be great for protection. So now if Spain or the Seminole Indians decide to attack anyone, it's going to be these poor people and the criminals. It's not going to be your best colonist. Next, we're going to talk about the 3 different types of charters. So first off, what is a charter? It's permission to claim land that is not already claimed. So there's 3 main types. We have a company charter. This was a grant to a private company to establish and run a company or a colony. Second, we have a proprietary charter. A proprietary charter was a grant to an individual or group to establish and run a colony, usually friends of the king. So a great example of this would be New York. So New York was given to the Duke of York by his brother, by the king. So the king overtakes New Netherlands and New Amsterdam, and he gives it to his brother, which was the Duke of York. And then the Duke of York renames it to New York and New York City. And so this is going to be known as a proprietary charter because it's a friend of a king, or really his brother. A royal charter, this is a colony that makes that the king established to have complete control over, and the whole reason for this is to make money. So examples of this would be North Carolina, South Carolina. The whole reason that North Carolina and South Carolina was created was to make more tobacco, which then made money for the king.